Hi, I'm Katie and this is episode 99 of Ornamentations. Today I have lots of progress to share with you. I have a start and I have a very exciting almost finish. So let's get started. Without further ado, we're going to jump into my favorite whip that I am working right now, and that is version 2 of Stacy Nash's Gingerbread House sewing book. So Christmas in July has started a little early here. It's still June, but I am really feeling this piece and I think you're gonna see why. So I have finished the understitching on the front. Okay, that's better. So I'm gonna hold this to the side just so you can appreciate the effect of the bijou and then turn it to the front so that we can look at the details here. I absolutely love this. I am just dead. This is going to get over embellishment, so that's why I said I've finished the understitching. I've blocked this and I hope to have the front finished for you, ready for the back to go on next time, and then I'll be starting the back of the Gingerbread House sewing book on July 1st to celebrate Christmas in July. This is version 2. I've already stitched this once. So the second version is on Legacy Linen 45 count Nightingale, which is the 45 count equivalent of 38 count filbert, same color. Unfortunately, both linens are inactive, but you can still find them if you would like to stitch along with me here. Hoop and Frame and Needle and Haystack both have the 45 count Nightingale last time I checked, and I'm pretty sure that Needle and Haystack still has 38 count filbert, and other stores probably do as well. You're just gonna have to hunt for it. It's a wonderful color. Or you could also go to the 37 count Smoke Signal, which is what I used on my first version, and there you can really see what the deeper ground does to it, as well as the smaller size. So 37, 45 here. And oh, if you're not a 45 count stitcher, you could use this conversion on the 38 count filbert, or you could just use this as stitched on 37 count Smoke Signal. Basically, you've got lots of options here, and I hope you have some fun playing with it because I am just loving it. So if you are going down to 37, 38 count or a 40 count of your choice, you can still use this exact conversion if it speaks to you. It is quite similar to my previous conversion, but this one is all surfine. So what you would do is you would take the 2 off the start of the number, and then you would have the 103 equivalent to put on a larger count of linen if you so chose. I love what the richer ground color adds to this. I think it makes the sparkle really pop and stand out. You're seeing some of those details in the house better here than you were on my previous version on a slightly lighter ground. So that I love. I am still in mourning about I can't use the bugles, which are my favorite part of this particular stitch. But I do have some thoughts about how to make this pop without using bugles. We're going to see some metallic purchases in haul, and those could be used with straight stitches over the cross stitch base, some lazy daisy stitches, or I have another idea which requires some supplies that I've ordered. They're not here yet. Naturally, they're up for delivery today, like right before I film. But next time we will find out how did I bedazzle this, and hopefully it'll be shaped into the front of an ornament, and we'll really get a sense of how this piece is coming together. I am just loving it, and if my favorite idea works, then this guy might be even blingier than my previous version, which is already pretty stinking blingy. You know how I am, right? So I am going to stitch a full back, as I said, so this piece finished as an ornament, just sandwiched together, non-opening, is going to be my July 12 by 12 ornament finish. And then the other thing I was thinking about when I was stitching this, I was looking at the back, thinking about colors. So I will share the new conversion, which is complete for the front, but there are some extra colors on the back that aren't used on the front. Basically you need 2 browns, and on my previous version I did a dark Gobelins and then a dark brown Bijoux to add extra sparkle. You know how I am, so I was thinking ahead to some of my choices, and these are 2 things I'm playing with. So this is a green Bijoux with a rainbow iridescence, colors jade, and then I think I'm gonna go a little lighter on my browns this time. Check that out against the Nightingale, looks amazing. This is copper leaf Bijoux. So potential extra choices aren't listed in the working conversion. I don't list anything until I've actually used it, but what I have used will be in the description if you would like to stitch along with me. And okay, getting back to what I was going to say, I got totally sidetracked there. I love the little fireplace scene on the back, and I was thinking you could do just this on the 38 count filbert, which would give you the size, or I could not think I will do this on 38 count filbert. I have a yard in stash, so the fact that it's inactive doesn't bother me in the slightest. Anyways, so just that finished as a standalone ornament on the tree, and then I would get to also hang fabulous color on my tree, but get to use the bugles, extra ornament, best of all worlds. I love it because as much as I adore this piece, I think my favorite will be this one, just because I'm such a sucker for that linen color. I love, love, love it. And unfortunately, you really can't see the sparkle. The camera just doesn't pick it up, but the Bijoux is so fabulously sparkly. I love it. And then the other thing I was going to say about this is that there was some news about the release of this chart. So this was an exclusive to last year's Jingle Ball from Lindy Stitches, and at the time the word that was going around, and I don't know if this was ever correct or not, was that this was a permanent exclusive that would never be released. However, Stacy Nash just posted an update on her Instagram, and what she said is that it is going to be released in 2025, but not in full release that you can just get it from the shop of your choice. You're going to be able to buy the chart either as a PDF or a paper chart, but only at the Jingle Ball, if I understood her post correctly. Go check it out on Instagram. I will link her handle in the description. So if you have been loving this piece, but you don't have the chart, there will still be a way for you to get it. I did the class version without the kit because I knew I wanted to use my own materials, and I would say that I was really satisfied. I liked getting the look into her creative process, and I have stitched this twice, and then I'm thinking about making a 3rd ornament out of it, so I would say I got full value for money on the chart. But if you missed it, there will be another chance to get the Gingerbread House sewing book chart from Stacy Nash, which I have really just enjoyed hugely. Ticks all my buttons. Chris, ticks all my buttons. Ticks all my boxes. Oh my gosh. Mixed phrases here. Sparkles, Christmas, fun mixed stitching, great color, love it. So that is Stacy Nash Gingerbread House sewing book version 2, and then of course the details on version 1 will be in the description as well if this one sings to you more. So that's where I am on that. As I said, I hope to start the back for July 1st, and then we'll see where I am on this next time. I want to bedazzle up the front, get the finishing started, so I hope to have some really good progress to show you. And so when I finish that, I technically should have turned to my ongoing sampler whip, cross stitch antiques Eliza Townsend, which we looked at last time. However, oh yeah, the decision fatigue is real at the moment, so instead since I was really feeling the Christmas stitching, I went ahead and started my first full-size animal cracker Whittaker, also from Stacy Nash. I've done bobbin, but he's really tiny. So those of you who are long-time viewers of my channel know how I feel about block stitching. However, there's been a lot going on. I'm really behind on Flosstube, everyone. I'm so sorry about that. I feel like I've barely watched anyone except for Brenda and Laura. But I was feeling block stitching. I don't know, who am I? I'm not Katie. Sitting down thinking block stitching is a thing in my world. Anyways, I made some pretty stinking good progress on Whittaker. He's got a head, he's got arms, he's got a chunk of the body. Seriously, who am I? I don't even know. So I am doing this a little differently. Frequently, you will see people outline an entire chunk of block stitching and then just fill in. I personally don't really like to do that, and that is not to say anybody else is wrong. I'm just explaining my process here. So the thing is, the tension is subtly different between an outline stitch and a fill-in stitch, especially when, like I do just rows back and forth, one leg of the cross all the way across, come back and cross them, move on to the next row. So when you've got that back and forth tension, it's subtly different from just crossing each stitch and working in an outline. I think it shows, I mean, not badly, but you can just tell, and white stitching is pretty notoriously unforgiving. So to make sure that this guy had a perfectly even texture, I'm just going back and forth. There is no outline and then fill in. That works for me. I just count how each stitch relates, sorry, how each row relates to the next. So previous row plus 2 stitches each side or whatever. And that seems to go okay for me, but I do understand why people do it a different way. I just am obsessive about having really even stitching. So far, this is all Gobelins. I'm not going to post a conversion yet because this is exactly 3 colors, and I haven't made the actual color decisions on this chart yet, which are what are his mittens, his scarf, which will be felted wool, and then his pants. I have some different thoughts about this. So I feel like you could go super vibrant. You could do pink and blue. You could do blue and a lightly faded red. Ooh, pops. Or you could do red and pink. So many choices. I am going to have to think about this. Thankfully, block stitching provides lots and lots of time for considering. So if you'd like to weigh in on different options, I have to admit, that's talking to me. Maybe he's gonna get just hot pink pants. That does have a little red in it. This is Gobelin's 2934. I think I used this on my first version of the Stacy Nash. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that this is the pink in here, actually. So, yeah. I have to think. I'll probably do some testing, and then I need to get out my felt stash and take a look at what I might have for his scarf, because that'll also determine what I do there. But I'm really looking forward to having this guy as a little finish to put in with my Christmas displays. Oh, he's adorable. I absolutely love it. And then that brings me to my very piddling amount of haul, which is I went on Hoop and Frame and I bought all the Vera Soie metallic braids in green in size 4, which is quite fine. It's quite stitchable. Say if you needed some sparkly green detailing on a garland, you could add straight stitches, lazy daisy stitches, or some kind of other decorative over detailing with a size 4 metallic braid from Vera Soie. And because I really have a thing for their braids, I just went and bought all the greens that they had in size 4. Aren't those glorious? Those are from Hoop and Frame, but you can get them from any LNS. This guy's kind of jumping out to me. This is $28.29 and it's a mixed gold and actually I think that's blue in there. Yeah, gold and blue. That gives you the visual appearance of green. That'd be pretty sweet. However, as glorious as these are, I'm getting increasingly wedded to my other idea. So we might not see these in use for a hot minute, but there's something that's definitely really useful to have. A lot of my braids are the larger sizes. I really like size 8 to 12. I use them for ornament hangers all the time. But if you're going to over embellish and stitch with them, you would want the finer sizes. I don't have as many of those, so I just went ham. No regrets. And then something that I did watch, actually, okay, lie, I have not just watched Brenda and Laura, I also watched Susan Stanley. And just, we talk a lot about color on this channel, but I would like to note that Susan Stanley, in her most recent Flosstube, which I'm going to link in the description, has a fabulous explanation of some color principles and terms. If you haven't seen it, go and watch it. It's incredibly difficult to speak about color and describe it accurately, and she does it much better than I do. So if you're interested in color, make sure you're watching Susan. Make sure you watch this particular episode because she gives really good explainers about terms, how they're used, and some basic color principles that are really useful for any stitcher to understand, whether you ever want to make your own color decisions or not on thread. You're usually making some kind of decision on linen or on finishing, and understanding color is really helpful to that. She also speaks about color with a lot of precision, which is something that I really appreciate. I usually try to talk about colors by identifying their component shades. So if a red leans orange versus leaning blue, for example, that's a more precise description than the catch-all, warm and cool. Those can be useful concepts, but they're often misapplied. So identifying a color by breaking down its component parts, I find to be the more accurate way to describe color, and that's something that you see from Susan a lot, although she does also use the terms warm and cool. So she is first and foremost a quilter, and I believe that's a very common color tool that is used in quilting. But you can also see how much precision she uses in her analysis and understanding of color. As someone who's pretty obsessed with color myself, I know a master when I see one. And I know a lot of you enjoy the color discussions on this channel, so if you're not already watching her, I did want to point you to a resource that I think might be very useful to you. Okay, with that, let's get to the headline news for this episode, and that is my sweep bag. I do not have a finish, but holy crap, am I close. So this is missing the just finishing touches on the bottom tassels, one drawstring, it's a 10 tassel, and the Turk's head knot that finishes off the top. Otherwise, we're looking at a complete sweep bag assembly, and it is fabulous. So let's talk about how this came to be. This is a very small detail that it's missing, which is just drawstring, Turk's head knot, which I already have started and ready to slip on the drawstring, and then putting on the tassel. However, you really don't want to rush finishing, especially not on a project of this type. Doing that is how you end up with crooked drawstring holes on the back. Oh! I'm dead. Are you excited about this as I am? It's actually probably not possible to be as excited about this as I am, but oh, I'm in love again. Thank goodness. So today's project, after I'm done filming, is going to be getting the second drawstring through those annoyingly small holes. So you punch through this with an awl to make those, although punch through isn't quite the correct term. You never actually cut the fabric. The awl pushes the weave apart to make and then enlarge the hole. I have awls of several sizes since I'm always sinking wires in stump work, this is kind of the more ladylike one that I use most often. And then I have a stonker big one with a nice stress, and you can just jam the thing. However, not even this is big enough to just easily work 2 braids through. You need an awl that is the size of a pickaxe to deal with this thing. So working that second braid through was not a 5-minute job. I do have an idea about how I am going to do that, but like I said, not something that you rush. And one of the reasons that you can just stick holes in this and you're not going to see any fraying or damage is because when you don't cut the weave remains structurally intact, and it's held in place by all of this very dense metal background stitching, which really just keeps everything in place. So I'm gonna put this through a fair amount of stress working through my second drawstring, and you are not going to see wear at the holes at all, which is why there are no buttonholes on the outside. Now, if I had planned to do the top drawstring assembly, which I actually didn't, we'll get to that in a minute, I would have put buttonholes on the silk lining just because it makes the holes bigger and easier to work the braids through. However, actually reverting to the recommended putting the drawstring through the top assembly was kind of a last minute decision. Did not plan ahead, therefore no buttonholes on the inside silk lining, which I would have liked to have done. Ooh, good shot of the super sparkly gold. I like that. Let's hope that stays for a second. Anyways, so my plan was to, not my plan, I did actually put little braided loops at the top, and I was just going to have the drawstring at the top instead of going through the bag itself, and that was because I'm lazy. I didn't want to work more background filling to have more vertical clearance above the design, which is what I really would have liked. However, I'm gonna insert a photo here. This is what it looked like. You do get a lot of concentration of color at the top with the drawstrings being fully visible and double stacked. And in my mind, even at this state, this was working just fine because of the color dominance of the tulip. However, when I got when I got the silver edging in, that was just a, oh boy, no. And so I decided to change my plan, and I gave the tulip clearance by just skipping it entirely, hugging this as close at the top as possible. And you know what? I think it works. I would have preferred to have planned this and put some extra filling in here to have more clearance for the drawstrings, but given that this was a last minute MacGyvered solution, it actually turned out pretty well. I'm pretty pleased. So I also ordered my finishing work, and differently from the recommended thing, because if you look inside, I realize you can't see all the way to the bottom, although you can see how stunning that fuchsia taffeta is. It's shot silk, so it subtly changes colors and you see different things in it. So this is a clean assembly, and that is not period accurate. So one thing we know from the study of 17th century sweet bags, the originals, and so I'm getting all of this from Sweet Bags by Jackie Carey. We've talked about this book a lot in previous Flosstubes, but I'll link it again in the description just in case you're new. So you can see in surviving 17th century examples that what they're really concerned with is giving you a beautiful exterior. The interior assembly is often quite messy, in which things are just stitched down over the lining, totally visible, not bothering to hide any of those assembly components. However, this is not the 17th century. I am fully trained in garment making, dressmaking, and sewing, and I see absolutely no reason to have stray bits of braid and gimp poking out everywhere. So with a little thought and planning, I was able to change and adjust my ordering of work so that everything is in there cleanly. The bottom tassels went in before the lining, and so you can't see any of the interior attachments on my decorative bits. It wouldn't really matter if you could, because it's not like this is an object that's going to be used. It's just something beautiful that I made for the pleasure of making it and looking at it. And oh my gosh, it's so tactile. You know, the thing is, I do a lot of glued finishes or things where the fabric is fixed in place. It's not often left loose like this, so that you can really appreciate the way that fabric moves, the way it reflects light, see everything, the changing nature of the shot silk. This more flexible object that really shows the essential quality of textiles is actually quite interesting and enjoyable. I don't think this is my last sweep bag. I've really fallen in love with the form doing this. So this is done completely by hand so far, no machine stitching. I stitched everything together very carefully by hand, mostly using Soie Surfine. And the funny thing is that I've had this taffeta selected for ages. I think it just perfectly sets off the very like pink of the exterior, and the screamer pink that I've been using for the Stacy Nash piece is a perfect match. It's kind of funny how things can suddenly be everywhere in your life at the same time. And I think this could be really hard to see because it's such a good match, but I also used it to stitch my cipher inside the lining to sign the piece, essentially. This does have all the traditional finishing elements of a 17th century sweep bag. Ooh, my pretzel knots are a little floppy. This is going to take some zhuzhing. Except for one, and that is the twined edging that you most commonly but not always see on these things. Tricolor, 6 loops, has to be worked with 2 people, and not just 2 people of a reasonably high skill level. I would say both trained in finger loop braiding, or an equivalent skill about tensioning loops of different lengths. I was not liking the results I was getting. I tried a few different methods of trying to get around that. I looped in my mom to be my second pair of hands, and we were just not getting good results. And then another problem I was running into is that the 3-color scheme just wasn't working for me with my design. So I finally got to assert my personality on this because, you know, there's not anything original here, by using holly braid. It was finally the right application. So I did holly braid as diagrammed in Jackie Carey's Elizabethan Stitches in silver passing as my outline edging for the complete bag in place of the woven twined edging that is more commonly seen on 17th century sweep bags. The others, what you see when you don't get a twined edging is usually a plaited braid stitch, but ooh, I was bound and determined to get holly braid on here somehow. Really not sure why that was my particular point of obsession on this, but it was. I was kind of thrilled, and I actually think that the silver sets it off really nicely. It echoes the detailing I added. So one reason I am further along on this than I had thought is that figuring out those final details on the flowers was actually not as time consuming as I had feared. When I really got down to work, the choice of thread there was fairly obvious. There was really only one thing that ticked all of the boxes, and that is silver Russian Rococo. So it's a lightly kinked thread. It's not really going to focus. Hold on, let me see if it works in front of the sweep bag. Not really seeing the details still. However, touch thicker than I would have liked. What really would have been better is Russian Rococo in a slightly finer grade, very, very fine. So thread's not that much thinner, but what's finer is the kinking back and forth that marks Rococo. Naturally, I only had this in gilt, not in silver, and that's a special order production run. I was not going to wait 6 months to finish my sweep bag, so regular grade Russian Rococo it was, and when I finally started playing around with my choices, it was the very clear choice here. So I spent less time futzing around with what are my final details on the embroidery itself than I had feared, and I was able to move on to the finishing pretty quickly. And then, you know, the silver edging turned out more substantial than I had really originally been looking for. It was necessary to just give the flowers a little detail to keep them from sinking into this very dominant gilt background, and I think in that sense it really worked. And then it ended up being reinforced as a visual design reference by silver edging and holly braid and silver passing. So sometimes things work out even when that's not the way you planned. If your design idea is cohesive enough, you will find a way to make all those disparate elements come together in the end, or at least I hope I have. So this is almost a finish. As I keep saying, it's just missing that one piece on the other side, and I'm going to get to that today after filming. This is going to be a relatively quick episode, I hope, because I really want to get back to this. But for the next time, I should have a complete FFO to show you. But almost there with so many fabulous little details. And the other thing I'm going to do is just trim up and decide on the final length of those tassels. They're taking kind of a beating because I keep on manipulating the bag with all the finishing tasks. So I haven't done the final trim and cleanup on those until that's going to be the absolute last thing. Once the drawstrings in, tassels on, Turk's head's not as secure, the actual last step here is going to be cleaning up these bottom tassels. But oh man, do they look fabulous or what? I'm dead over this whole thing. So hopefully next time we are going to be looking at a final, truly, utterly, completely done sweep bag, and that will actually be very timely because that is also my 100th Flosstube episode. Can you believe it? I can't believe it. It's going to be my 4th Flosstube anniversary in August, which is just, I don't know where the time has gone. Thank you all for listening to me ramble about my stitching, whether this is your first episode or your 99th. I'm very glad to have you. It never ceases to amaze me that anyone at all wants to listen to me talk about my stitching, or my random color thoughts, or my thoughts on how the interior assembly of sweep bags should be neater than their 17th century equivalents. I mean, really, why does anybody listen to me? I'll never understand. But I'm very grateful that you do, because it makes so many things possible, and the wonderful sense of community here on Flosstube is also a joy. So, long-winded way to say I'm wrapping this episode up, but next time we're gonna have a mega episode to celebrate the century mark of Ornamentations. We'll be celebrating that milestone, so I will be updating you on my current stitching, please showing you a finish on this beauty. I mean, I might actually have to have some insert a video of me strutting around with this thing. So much. I'm obsessed. But we will also be looking back at my favorite cross stitch finishes during that time, some of the things that I have most enjoyed stitching that you might also enjoy if you haven't stitched them already, and with some very special giveaways to thank you all for watching, for commenting, for engaging, and for sticking with me and stitching with me this long. I can't believe it. So I will see you again in 2 weeks, and until then, happy stitching.